Let's give another 30 seconds. I see the numbers climbing. Okay, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to colleagues joining us from around the globe. Thank you for joining Infogain's celebration for the remarkable achievement of women worldwide as a part of this year's International Women's Day. This year, the International Women's Day theme is Inspire Inclusion. Diversity isn't just a buzzword, it is the very essence of innovation and progress. At Infogain, we are privileged to have a rich tapestry of perspectives, experiences, and talents represented with our diverse community. We proudly acknowledge the remarkable contribution of women in shaping the future of technology. Now, as we embark on this journey together, join us throughout this month in honoring resilience, strength, and contribution of women across all walks of life. Our moderator for the Fireside chat today is Infogain's Chief Marketing Officer, Mrs. Neha Kathuria. Neha leads our global marketing and branding programs. And without further ado, I would like to introduce our guest for today, Ms. Abha Dogra. Abha is the Chief Technology Officer and member of Executive Management Committee at CAE. Abha leads CAE's global technology teams by helping shape the company's broader strategic direction to maximize business growth by helping shape the company's broader strategic direction while overseeing the development of CAE's digital and technology roadmap. She is responsible for driving strategic development of technology function, fostering synergies between digital and engineering teams to innovate intelligent products, operations, and services at scale. She is joining us today to share her thoughts on significance of inclusivity, diversity, and future of technology trends that are shaping the aviation industry. Thank you so much, Abha, for joining us, and over to Neha. Thank you.
Thanks, Arpana. Hi, Abha. First, a very warm welcome to Infogain from all of us. Our colleagues have logged in from multiple cities, and we look forward to having a fantastic conversation. And special thanks, because I know you're traveling and you come back to the hotel room, try to make this event just on time. So welcome, Abha.
Thank you so much.
So Abha, to kick off this session, can you tell us a bit about yourself? You grew up in India, you've earned your master's in the US, you've interacted with people from diverse backgrounds. How did that shape you as an individual?
Thanks, Neha. And first of all, I really appreciate Infogain to give me this opportunity to connect with fellow women. And thank you for taking out time. I did grow up in India. I was actually born in Delhi. I'm a very typical Delhiites, if you can relate with that. I actually studied to become an investment banker. I did my first master's from Bombay. I did my investment banking and international trade major from Narsi Monji Institute of Management Studies in Bombay. If any one of you remember Harshad Mehta time, I was the graduate of that era, and when we came out, we didn't get good jobs, and I was struggling, and that led me to explore where else can I make money. Money was a big driver then, and that introduced me to the world of computers. So I ended up doing my second master's from Boston University, and that really started my journey, Neha, in the world of tech.
Wonderful. And I'm a Delhiite, can totally relate to it, but interesting to hear from investment banking to tech. I think this conversation is just getting exciting. So But what did you aspire to be when you were growing up? Who was your role model? And maybe talk a bit about what did success mean to you then and what success means to you now.
You know, I think many of you can relate with me. Growing up during my time in India, coming from a middle class family, success had only one meaning. It was you either become an engineer or a doctor. In my family, because I come from the family of academians, so I had a lot of PhDs and professors surrounding me. So I think I didn't have much of a thought process to even figure out as to what do I really want to do. But I was driven. I was always a driven, competitive person. I used to play sports at school. Um, and I just knew that I will be a working female. Coming from a family, I was blessed enough. My dad and my parents were always clear that they wanted their two daughters to be working. Um, so there was nothing more than that. We just knew that my parents won't let us lose to not work. So, so the only direction we had from them was make sure you get good grades and you need to be working. So that was my direction. And I think success was really driven by good grades. You know, as I said, family of academians. So it was good grades to start with, then the ability to be able to go and earn our living ourselves was the second criteria. And over years, definition has changed for me. I'm much older, and having the opportunity to work in various startups to Fortune 100 companies in multinational setup. I think my current definition of success is really how do I apply all my learnings, which comes as a very blessed way, in a very blessed way for me. How do I apply it in a situation where if I'm working for an organization like CAE, I can really be an asset for the organization, for my people. And then overall, driven by the mission. So I happen to be with a company which is driven by a very noble mission, which is all about safety. Safety of the people, safety of the world. So really now the success to me is how do I apply my learning to make the company successful, but more importantly, make my people successful. Um, and on a personal note, I think I strive that anyone who happened to spend time with me, if anyone is taking time to spend with me, they should leave with a pleasure of spending time with me. No one should be wasting time on me. Is my personal success goal.
And I'm sure after this conversation, our 6,000 infogainers will be very happy to spend more time with you. So I'm quite confident about that. But I think that gives a good idea of like your background. But I think one specific question I had for you in your role, and I would say you have kind of taken a path which is mostly taken by men, right? So what kept you motivated? We understand how you got into it, but what kept you motivated to continue in the same and carve out a successful career out of it?
I think that's a very good question. Just to share some of my trajectory, as I said, I studied investment banking, which was also at that point of time was not a female field. You will find females more in accounting or corporate finance, but not really in investment banking area. I think I was a very competitive person to start with, and you know, very early on, I was given an environment to explore and not try to fit in. So I think that really became my strength throughout these 25 years, moving away from my country, not having a family around. I started my career in tech, and then I worked for some very, very hardcore tech companies, you know, companies like Akamai, PTC, where I got the opportunities to work with brains from MIT, from brains from Harvard. um, and I think what really always get me going is to take every challenge to prove the person that I can do it. Initially, when I was young, I was a little bit more vocal, and I will say, I want to prove you wrong. but but now I think I just took it as a challenge to continue learn more. I always took the path of continuous learning. I'm a big reader. I read a lot. I always take upon myself that if I'm a leader, before I can lead anyone, it's very important that I should have done my homework. So I think that spirit of constant learning and just being a competitive person has helped me continue with the drive till today.
Are you a podcast person, or are you like a hardcover book cover, a hard book reader? What are you, like, Kindle reader or?
I am actually a book reader
Oh,
because
interesting.
I am very traditional. I buy my books and I have a corner in my house next to my fireplace with a hot cup of Indian tea is where I spend time. But then I do read a lot of news. I do a lot of just general reading, and that's on my phone.
Perfect. Okay, so Abha, I'm going to change gears, perhaps discuss a few things about International Women's Day. We don't need a day to discuss about women, but I think it's good to just spotlight the theme and talk a bit about it. The theme is inspiring inclusion. So what does inclusive leadership mean to you? Can you share some personal experiences, anecdotes from your journey that has shaped your perspective, both on diversity and inclusion in the workplace?
Um, I have different definitions, and even my definition of inclusivity has undergone change over years, and a lot of experiences to share. Very early on, when I took my first leadership role, I was I was the only Indian person. Forget about a female. I was the only Indian person in a company, but I also found out that I was surrounded with a lot of mathematicians. I had a lot of mathematicians in my team coming in from Russia, from Ukraine, um, and I found out that there was one common theme from those diverse setup about communication. So if you look at um, people from Asia, generally Russia, Ukraine, Western Europe, then India, um, many a times how we English is not our mother tongue, and I would see typically there will be scenarios coming to me as a leader that a person in your team doesn't have effective communication, they don't have effective soft skills. And I would always wonder, because knowing those person as my team members, I found them very effective. Um, and then I realized that the differences in how we speak needs to be included. Not everyone's mother tongue is English. And even if you know how to speak English, if that's not your mother tongue, your manifestation of the spoken language might be perceived as not being soft, when the intention of the speaker might not be that, simply because they might still be thinking in their mother tongue and doing the translation in the spoken language as English. So that gave me the first drive in that company to mention that different ways of speaking English also need to be considered and not always seen from a particular style of speaking English. So that to me is also inclusivity. How do you speak? You might be speaking English, but the manifestation of that might be very different. I also feel that inclusivity is also about cognitive differences. You might be a female, you might be different set of females, but each of us might have very different way of thinking on a similar topic, just given our background, where we all come from. So that cognitive diversity also needs to be considered as a topic of inclusivity. In the corporations, I have been to companies where I was the first executive that they would have hired. Like at Akamai, I was the first engineering and tech leader that they ever hired from outside, because Akamai is a company that started from MIT. A lot of people came from MIT, and they took the senior position. Um, and when I joined the company, even the diversity in terms of tenure in an organization can become a criteria of non-inclusivity. We typically say, oh, that person doesn't know about it.
It's a
Too new.
different tribe. It's a different tribe that this.
Yeah, it's a different tribe, right? So to me, over years, what I have learned is that any kind of a majority setup, and there is no one shape of a majority setup. It can be ethnicity, it can be tenure in a company. Any kind of majority setup can make a minority feel their majority. It can be tenure, way of thinking, way of speaking, your color, obviously your gender. And there are not just two genders in the world. There are so many genders, and now all of you know it's not just in humankind, even in sea life, there are so many genders. So to me, if you are in a majority setup, and we all know when we are a majority, we were talking about Delhi Heights, we know when we are in North India, we are the majority. So whenever you are in your majority space, I think it's very important for all of us to be cognizant to include a diversity, to include a minority. And that's my new definition of just open up the doors, give the space for someone to speak up, and train yourself to just accept different voices. It takes a lot of muscle building to accept all kind of minorities, because all of us have our muscle memory that we all have developed over years, and unlearning that requires intention.
Yeah, I think very well said. Unlearn to learn new things, right? Like they say, we're so used to like being brought up in one community, behaving that way. But as we go forward, I think those small changes, which are muscle changes, like you said, will take us a long way. I love that answer, Abha. So the second question on that same topic would be, I think all of us on a daily basis, a challenge all the technology organization face is acquiring talent, right? And equally difficult is retaining the talent. So how does developing an inclusive culture that addresses specifically women issues help recruit and retain them? And if I would add a follow up there, what happens to businesses that don't do these kind of things in today's era?
I think that's a very pertinent topic. You will see, as every company is driven by sustainability, and believe me, everyone has a noble intention. There is an intention and a very mindful effort by everyone to go and acquire more diversity. So you will see every chief people officer uh, and every leader is very mindful and intentional to hire diversity. However, one of the biggest challenge that I have seen is acquisition is still becoming easier because of the intention of every executive leadership group is to go and acquire. But the most difficult part is what you said, Neha, is to retain it. Actually, there is a study done where you will see um, the most attrition of the new diverse acquisition of the talent happens in the range of 1 to 5 years.
Mm.
5 years is that critical period. The people who can jump over that 5 year cusp, typically you will be able to retain it. But the second to fifth year is when you lose most of the acquired diversity. There's been studies that have been done on that topic. And I look at my own career. I spent first almost 11 years at ADP, and I loved it there. And then different companies headhunted me. I joined companies. Some of the companies I left within 12 to 16 months. And then when I retrospect, the reason was there was a lot of effort done to acquire diversity. But when you bring in a diversity, especially at as you go up in the ladder, if you bring in at the entry level, still easier. But if you bring in from a middle level management to a senior level management, you are acquiring someone for their skills, for their voice, for their neural diversity. Um, but most of the times, integrating that diversity of thought process is where the companies struggle. Because that typically is seen that we don't do it this way, or that's seen as a person creates conflicts, doesn't fit into their colleagues who have been working here for 15 years. Um, so I think that safe space creation for the acquired diversity is very important. Over years, I have created my own definition of culture. Um, After for last few years, the choices of my job I have been making is driven by just one factor. I don't join a company driven by a title or the job description. It's the culture. And I joined CAE for its culture. That was my primary criteria to join CAE. And when my CEO asked me, okay, define culture to us. What's your definition of culture? And I had a simple answer. I should feel safe. I should
Amazing.
feel safe, right? Because when I'm at home, when I'm with my parents, I feel safe. And if I'm spending 10 hours of my daily life in a space and I don't feel safe, then there is work to be done. So I think there's still work to be done there across many organizations.
Amazing. And as they say, culture is not something you put on slides, right? Culture is something that you speak to people, and like you said, those actions, right, that make you feel safe, and creating that space. That's what matters, right? Whatever. Don't do it because it's a checkbox. Industry is doing it, but do it because you really want to create a safe space. Okay, so you've actually spoken in the CIO magazine. I think we were doing a bit of your LinkedIn research and reading the articles. So you've spoken eloquently about emotional intelligence, which is equally as important as technical knowledge. And you're an advocate of laissez-faire management style. And how do you think all this fits into a culture where women are treated fairly and equally?
Um, I think they are all very related, Neha. Again, I'll take you back to my background when I was making my career in the North America corporate sector. I had my own experiences. I had experiences where I got all kind of feedbacks, right or wrong, but being the young person, being very driven to succeed, many of those feedbacks I'll take personally, because you just do not know how to not take it personally, because you couldn't separate your corporate identity from your personal identity when you are young. And that happens mostly with women. I have seen, simply um, because of the general maturity of the society overall, to make women feel and give them an environment to be self-confident out of the box. It's proven. So when that gets compounded with the kind of reinforcement that you get at workplace, it can be hazardous. Um, so to me, when you are young and when you get this constant feedback about the way you talk, your lack of soft skills, imagine an Indian education system. We never heard, at least growing up, I never heard, and even though I studied in a Catholic school, I never heard this word called soft skill until I came to the American corporate culture. For the first time, I heard those two words was as a feedback I got about my soft skill. And and then now when I have two boys who are studying in the American school system, right from day one they are taught about soft skills, how you should negotiate, how you should talk. So I do believe that these are the cultural differences that exist. And what we are also not taught is this concept of EQ, because when you come from highly competitive ecosystems, it's all about IQ, right? Intellect, how intelligent you are, what are your grades, which Ivy League college are you going to go to, um, where the stress is more about your grades, your intelligence, but not that much on EQ. I will say though, there is much more conversation about EQ nowadays. Um, I had to learn it on the job through all the feedback. So I was, I was definitely improving my IQ, but I think one thing that I had to learn pretty much of my own was EQ. And what I also learned is EQ is not about just submitting yourself, because EQ can also be just saying yes to everything, simply because you want to come across adjusting. So it's a learning curve. It's a big learning curve of how to hold your ground, how to separate your personal beliefs from the ability to negotiate and still take not so positive feedback simply as your job feedback and not have an indication of you as a person. Um, it comes a lot with experiences, but at the same time, I think this topic, if it is discussed openly, will help, especially women, to not take everything personal. Because very early on, as they are trying to grow in the career, if every feedback is taken as personally, it brings their esteem very down. And that is something I do believe needs to be talked more with females, with group of minorities. And going back to my management style, really my management style came from all these personal experiences that there's no one size fit all. Depending upon if I am dealing with strong personalities in my leadership team, which I have a lot, because they all um, come from very experienced background, then I need to be much more of an enabler than someone who comes with strong opinion. Um, and that's where we play as equal. We complement each other. But sometimes when I'm working with um, young people or people where I can provide more emotional support, then I don't mind being a little bit of a more hands-on leader. So I have no one size fit all, but mostly as of today, I'm surrounded by very strong leaders. I actually learn more from them than I can share my experiences, but together we make a great team.
Superb. And I think, as they say, right, there are few days when you get up, you roll up sleeves, we might be coding. Next day, we are doing panel discussions, and the other day, we are in the boardroom, right? So, but I think the message is that inclusion is not a matter of correctness, right? It's key to the growth for any organization. So, Abha, I know a lot of messages are coming on the chat. Our audience have a lot of questions, but let me move to the last section from my side. And it's inspiring to hear a leader who kind of shares both concerns and vision of the future, right? And as technology continues to evolve rapidly, what steps company can take to ensure their innovation efforts prioritize diversity and inclusion at the outset? Maybe any two tips that you want to share. Yeah.
Sure. See, as I mentioned, honestly speaking, the best form of diversity is cognitive diversity, neural diversity. Um, I also believe that the neural diversity also evolves given where and what kind of ecosystems they come from. You know, depending upon your society, depending upon your macroeconomic situations, microeconomic situations, our neural diversity also evolves very differently. You know, the hardships have your intelligence shape up differently than a privileged background. Nothing wrong or right, there's no black and white here. It's just diverse experiences give you diverse kind of intelligence. And hence, for any organization, for them to leverage and be the best, they do have to be very intentional to acquire every kind of diversity. At CAE, in fact, that's why I'm in Poland. This week is Krakow is one of our technology hubs because we have great talent here. Montreal is our biggest technology hub. We have technology hubs in Dallas, in Bangalore, in Kuala Lumpur, in Montevideo, in South America, because your diverse ecosystems shape up your intelligence differently. At the end of it, coding is coding, Java is Java, but the same Java gets written by a person um, in India to Poland to Americas very differently. And I have seen those code. Your if else code, how you write, is also how you think, how you do decision making. Because anyone who is, if there's a coder here, when you're writing your pseudocode and when you are writing your algorithms, it's a mechanism of decision making, and the decision making comes from your all kind of different experiences, not just by learning maths. And hence it's very important to have all kind of diversity included, which includes geographical diversity, neural diversity, academic diversity, to really create the most productive teams. And that's what I work on. And I think the companies with the most diverse backgrounds are showing immense growth, even in their outcomes.
Great. And one follow-up question, which I definitely would love to hear your thoughts, Abha, is what role can our male colleagues play in championing diversity, inclusion efforts, and how can they contribute in creating a more inclusive workplace? It's our day, so I have to ask that question, right?
No, absolutely. I feel about the male colleagues because, and I speak to many of them, many a times they just don't know.
Mm.
You know, I will share an example with one of my male colleague. He sits out of Washington, and he works with a lot of congressmen and government. And he and I were having a discussion, and we were talking about a scenario about, he would typically say, "Guys, let's do this." And he said, until one of my female team member came to me and said, "Why do you always say guys?" It was as simple as that. And he's like, "Oh my God." So I think sometimes we also have to understand that it's the lack of awareness why many of the majorities, you know, act a particular way. So I do call out on every female, help your male colleagues understand also, if you think they are open to understand, as to where they can evolve, where they can change. But we can't assume they know it all, because unfortunately, most of the societies still have a huge learning curve to have the overall system such that people are more aware of how their actions might not be inclusive. So it's on even on us as females to teach our male colleagues that, you know, this particular action can be more inclusive. And I have seen very openness from my male colleagues. They are very open to learn. So I think it's a collaborative process too.
Yeah, and speak up, like you said, point out, and next time they'll remember. So Abha, I hope you enjoyed this conversation as much as I did. Definitely great lessons to take back. But before we let you go, I would like to ask one last question. And you have had and continue to have a very successful career. And 2024 looks like the year of transformation. We cannot end the call without talking about Gen AI. And how do you see the role of Gen AI shaping the aviation industry, and particularly, I think, in terms of diversity, inclusion, ethical considerations?
You know, this is a difficult topic. Neha. You know, I think AI is a disruptive technology. Let me put it. You know, Gen AI is just a branch of it. But I must say that after internet, and in fact, bigger than internet, if there is one disruption that's going to take over the whole world, I personally believe is AI. Um, AI is two forms, if I can classify. It's called discriminative AI, which is the general form of AI, where you take data, you train data to make certain predictions. Generative AI is just a branch of normal AI where the data is already trained. You are dealing with trained data to create solutions on top of it. So, a little bit of a technical clarity here that Gen AI is just a small branch of AI. Within aviation, we are using all form of AIs. In fact, one of the big focus for us at CAE, and one of the mission statement I give to my team is in next 4 to 5 years, I would like every problem that we solve today, technically in one form, I would like to see that that is being solved through some form of AI, because at the heart of it, it's data. So in aviation, we deal with a lot of data, a lot of maths. Um, if I give you some concrete examples of where our focus is, we are looking to leverage and leverage some of the open source technologies to create our own large language model, because we deal with a lot of text. We have our own courseware. We have a lot of our own material on which we train defense forces and commercial pilots and the business aviation pilots. So we are looking to create our own large language model by leveraging a lot of open source technologies. But at the same time, in our airline operations software, where we work with Infogain, like with our flight services solution, our goal is to really predict more and more of disruptions in advance to ensure that the airline operations are much more predictable. So that's what I'll say is where we are looking in leveraging all form of AI.
Thank you, Abha. And I know there are a lot of chat messages which have come. So
Yeah.
I will pass it back to Arpana. She's going to bring in a few of the audience questions and they're going to ask the questions. So hope that's okay. And we will see you again. Thank you.
So
Thank
much.
you,
Thank you so
Neha. Thank you. And wow, this has been such a potent brew of various perspectives, different thinking, and progressive solutioning. And I'm sure each one of us will leave this conversation with a new outlook than what we joined the session with. And we have questions pouring in, Abha. There are a lot in the Q&A pod already. I would encourage people, if you want to raise hands, we can unmute you and ask questions in person. However, my first question to you, Abha, is, how do you help, or how do you think that, the organization can create safe spaces to accept different thoughts, people from diverse background and experiences, and how can this become a positive force in the organization?
um, this is the most difficult topic because I think the first thing is to being aware that what kind of culture do we have? And every company has micro ecosystems too. There's their culture, and the more global you are, more distributed organization you are,
Mhm.
you would always have micro ecosystems, right? So it's very important, first of all, to be aware as to what kind of culture currently exists. I always say, look at why people are leaving. Are people leaving their bosses, or are people leaving their role? Are they leaving their team? Are there microaggressions? So I think it needs to be it's actually a very data driven exercise. It's not that subjective. um, it's very important to have a current state of the union assessment, first of all, and then you really have to be very intentional about it.
Mhm.
And it really starts from top down. I always say culture starts top down.
So true. Wonderful, Abha, and I'm sure it's a journey, but yes, we definitely need to start from one place. And we have a question also from the audience. Tarangita, can we have the question from Prakash, please?
Sure.
Prakash, go ahead. All yours.
Thank you so much. Hey, Abha, this is Prakash. Okay, let me get my video on here. I can't seem to be able to do that. But anyway, I'm one of the BU leaders at Infogain. So thanks for sharing your story with us. It's quite inspirational. I'm definitely going to use it to motivate my 10-year-old daughter. So my question to you is, so you've had quite an illustrious career. I'm sure you have a lot more to accomplish, and we sincerely hope you do. But for many young girls like my daughter, you already made it to the top, right? So the question is, how hard is it for a woman to make it to the top, especially transitioning from middle management to executive roles, right? The last mile, if you will. Is it extra hard for a woman versus man? What's your experience been, and what can corporates do to remove those barriers?
um, First of all, Prakash, thank you. I don't, and I don't want to sound very humble stating this, but I have to say it in a very genuine way. Uh, um, it's nice and kind of people when they say I have arrived somewhere, or in my head I'm struggling still. Just to be very honest, I'm still in a very much in a struggling zone. I think where I take pride on myself is I don't like giving up. And if I have to give up, I will give it up on my own terms. And I think that's the message for your daughter or for any female. There is nothing called you have arrived. There's nothing called you have arrived, right? There will be, it has been very difficult for me, but I still feel privileged and blessed, that there was never ever anything that was big enough for me to give up. And the only reason, if I retrospect as to why that happened to me, honestly speaking, the strength was always my family. When you do not have the safe zone um, in your work environment, which many a times we all don't have. And I don't mean safe in a negative way, it's just where you can be comfortable in your skin all the time. I think it's very important for the young girls um, to create those safe zones, which might not always be at work. And for some, it might not be home either. That's fine. But I think it's very important for every female to always be on a lookout to create that safe zone. It might be just one person. Find your cheerleader, find your motivator. It's very important, someone who's looking at what you have rather than always looking what you don't have. If I share one of my story, that confidence was given to me. I don't have many mentors, not because I am pompous. I have to find people who can find in the most flawed version of me something positive that I bring to the table. And my first mentor, his name is Victor Mack. He was at ADP, and he was the first person who said, "Oh my God, Abha, you are an amazing architect." I didn't even know I am an architect till then. So I think my message to your daughter, or any female, or anyone for that matter, even males for that matter, we always talk about females, is find that one person in your life who can look at your positives, and curate that relationship, because there will be a lot of situations where you will be negated on what you don't have, and that's common. Don't take it personally, because everyone is struggling, but always find your cheerleader.
That's
Perfect.
brilliant. Thank you so much, Abha. Appreciate it.
That's indeed a very strong message, Ava. Find your cheerleader, and there are a lot of questions on on how support groups can work, and I'll take that one in a bit. But I also heard you talking about how important soft skills are. So there's a question around that how do we continuously improve softer aspects of professional development in an environment which is so technically driven, and we are only thinking of technical skills. So how do you manage in your team?
I also want everyone to understand, what does soft skill mean, right? Soft skill, and create your own definition. I started soft skill, just make everyone happy. So I started with that journey. I'm like, okay, you want me to be soft? I'll just say yes, I'll please you. That's not a soft skill, right? That's submissive attitude. So that's not soft skill, at least not my definition of soft skill. Then I'm like, okay, what's my definition of soft skill? Um, my definition of soft skill is negotiation. Proving your point not based on emotion, because there you are using emotion in a negative way, right? My arguments are typically not driven by emotion. They are driven by data and fact, experiences, with a lot of examples. So it's very important everyone develops the art of negotiating based on data and facts. That requires a lot of reading, that requires a lot of homework. You really need to create and master your craft, what you bring to the table. It's very important, because once you know what you bring to the table, will give you that confidence to engage into long negotiations. Last year, I had a conversation of 8 hours with my colleague in a hotel, discussing about just one topic. But kudos to both of us. Both of us were trying to point 8 hours, right? So important. That's my definition of soft skills: is emotionless, emotionally detached,
Mhm.
nothing personal, fact-driven negotiations is what I call soft skills, with complete humility.
Wonderful. And just a subset of the same question, Abha, how do you manage microaggression, and how do you help mitigate that? Because we see that quite often in work.
And that's the most prevalent form of bullying, if I can say so, in the work environment. That's the most common, um, and that's something that I recommend every organization to be watchful of. There's no real answer to it, right? I always say we always have to pick and choose. You can't take every microaggression as an activism goal, because that's not what you are there to spend your time at work, right? You have to pick and choose.
Mm-hmm.
Unless your role is to be an activist, yes, go and deal with every microaggression, right? Because everyone is on their own journey. You're not here to change a person. Um, but if that microaggression is not helping you to do your job effectively, you do have to confront it. But confront it based on data, facts, and if that microaggression is, I always say every act should help fill your bucket. If that microaggression is draining your bucket and you can walk away, walk away. It's nothing to lose.
Yeah.
It's nothing
Not
to lose.
all
It's not an
battle.
ego battle. It's not an ego
Yeah.
battle, right? So you have to be very smart to pick and choose. There's no one size fits all. But in a microaggression environment, it should be all about you, yourself, and your work and your effectiveness.
Wonderfully put, Abha. And I'm getting so many more questions. But can we take one more? Victoria, would you want to ask your question? And Tarangita, if it's okay to unmute. Or Heather, is Heather able to speak?
I've unmuted Victoria. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Victoria. You have a question? Okay. Heather, would you like to take up your question while Victoria is coming back?
Thanks so much, Abna. Very interesting. And I was looking at your LinkedIn profile, and it's fabulous. And my question to you is, you've done a lot and you've impacted a lot. I appreciate that you're in Boston. I'm a Beantown girl as well. Yay. What will be your legacy in the workplace?
Heather,
Yes.
hooray to Boston. I love Boston.
To
I'm a Bostonian.
Jamaica Plains.
Okay, perfect. A lot of eateries out there, some of my favorite ones for sure. But honestly speaking, Heather, I'm at a stage of my life. I am actually not driven to leave any legacy behind.
Wow.
I have no intention to leave any legacy behind. My only effort is if I can impact any individual to help them find their North Star. And if at any happy moment they can think about me or not think about me, is good enough. I have two sons, and my only thing is even not to leave any legacy with them, just have them enter into this world as nice human beings. So it might sound very good answer, but I really do not have any intention to leave any legacy.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Abha. And for all of us who could not ask our questions today, I'll ensure that Abha gets those questions and she's able to put her notes down and we'll pass it along. But Abha, one last question, on networking. I'm sure there's scope for all of us, and most of the times, women are they are held back in networking, and so any tips or your go-to strategy when it comes to networking and ensuring that you have your own people right next to you when you need them?
Absolutely. I guess it's very important that you don't do networking to find your next role. It come across very transactional. I think you have to define the purpose of networking. If you are going to make it transactional, it comes across. I go to a lot of networking events, and then and that's fine too. If you're going to actually find a role, that's fine. But I think there are other opportunities to gain from networking. As I said, you might find your cheerleader there. Sometimes the networking is, you might just leave that networking event from one good message to fill up your bucket. It's all about you. I always say that it's very important you know what your North Star is. And your North Star can be for a meeting, can be for a networking event, and for you yourself, for your life growth. I personally believe that be very intentional whom you network with, because it can be very draining otherwise. And you might feel nothing comes out of it, right? But something will come out of it only when you know what you want to achieve, and then you be very intentional about it. I hope it makes sense.
It does. And while you were saying this, I could almost remind myself that, we should be looking for more meaningful champions in our life than just connects who are just lost in your LinkedIn profile, and they're not meaningful connections actually. But thank you so much, Abha, for spending this time with us. Like I said, we have so many more questions, and I'm definitely going to park it with you and would look forward to your expert comments and pass it back to all of us. And I would also like to invite Dinesh. I'm sure it has been a wonderful conversation so far, but if you could just add a few words on how the experience was, and then we can wrap up the evening for everyone.
Wow, is all I can say. I want to say, take a minute and just say thank you, heartfelt thanks, Abha, for delivering what I feel was an inspiring and enlightening interaction. Thought your words quite thought-provoking. I was furiously taking notes. And to be honest, coming in, we've been part of these sessions before, many of these. I wasn't expecting such a candid and amazing discussion. So really, really thank you for that. And so I think the everybody who participated took a lot of notes, a lot of learnings, and I feel privileged to be and have the opportunity to hear your perspective. So thank you again for reminding us how important gender equality and then I think you challenge us to fight for a more inclusive workplace. So I think your commitment and talent and passion and everything you've achieved so far has been truly inspiring. Thank you again for making the time today. And all I have to say is, wow.
No, thank you so much, Dinesh. First of all, you are being kind, and your whole team has been super kind. I think it's a very mutual thing when you are meeting with kind people. It's always inspiring. Thank you for hosting such a wonderful event. Thank you for just letting me be me. So thanks for creating that ecosystem for me, and you have a great team. I also want to pass on my thank you to Rohit for even giving me this opportunity to interact with Infogain team, and all the best to all of you.
Abha, I wish I could share my screen at this point and show you all the chat messages which are coming in. And it's like, I will make sure I send you some of those comments offline, but truly inspiring and thought-provoking session. And if I should not have planned this for an hour, I think we've got around 50 questions. So as a half-day session, maybe. So maybe next time.
Neha, my Monday meeting with Abha is no longer a lunch. I'll be the reporter asking all the questions that are still left.
Yeah, I think you should show up the questions. I think some of the questions are very, very thought-provoking in itself. So I was reading through those, and I found them extremely thought-provoking in themselves. So it'd probably be useful to you as well. So we should make a list of those and send it over away.
I will do that.
I would be very much interested in looking at them, and I apologize I can't answer, but as Arpana said, I'll make sure I respond to them.
Thank you, Abha. On behalf of the entire team, we will let you go back to work. You're in Poland and you have an early morning flight to catch. Thank you once again.
Thank you.
Thank you, Abha.
Thank you, everyone.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Abha, and thank you
Have a good
everyone on the bridge.